One of the biggest things I see is the false assumption that you can be a leader and have this strong passion, be a visionary, and that you can delegate out the management practices or just believe that they'll organically happen. What's missing is owners or leaders thinking that you can out-lead that problem, like you can just continue to score more points to overcome that, when in reality, they need to have a pulse on what the defense needs to be doing to keep that metaphor. We as leaders, I think as much as we might not like it, we have to have some skill set in both. We definitely need to be strong leaders, but we also need to continue to evolve and sharpen our skill set when it comes to being a manager.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. I'm David Knack, head of sales here at Zengage, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who've built amazing businesses and are super well respected. So I thought it'd be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of the biggest mistakes that they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. All right, welcome back to another episode of Home Care Hindsight. I know there's been some re-releases the last few weeks. This event season has been kicking my butt, but I am back with a friend of the show, Emily Isbell. Incredibly excited to have you back. Emily, thank you for joining.
You're very welcome. Very excited to be here.
Since the last time you've been on, there have been some various changes in your business and world and life and stuff. You guys did a rebrand from the last time that you were on the show. I think probably most people are aware of it. Talk about what the big changes in your world and your business in the last year or so since you've been on the show.
We did a rebrand, as you mentioned, and a big part of that rebrand was about the reality that what we do is well beyond me, well beyond my experience doing turnarounds at home instead, well beyond my track record that I had created, and extended beyond me in the sense that I brought on team members that were my advisors that helped me make that happen. The term 24/7 solutions, our name comes from my book that I wrote, The 24/7 Solution. And that title came from the fact that I had realized what I needed to do in my businesses to overcome the burnout I was facing, the 24/7 demand of home care. And so it just fit. We are here to help home care owners find those solutions for their business so that they can relax away from the 24/7 demand of home care, but still meet the systems, meet the demands with systems in place for their businesses.
One of the things that I've taken to saying recently is home care is a 24/7 business, but it shouldn't be a 24/7 job. And I talked to a lot of owners for whom the business is a 24/7 job. I also talked to a lot of owners that it is no longer a 24/7 job for them, but that means that their people bear the brunt of the stress, and the burnout shifts from the owner to the owner feeling badly because they're putting their people dramatic, but like in harm's way. There's a lot of stress that happens in this business. And I think one of the things that you guys do so well is to help people build systems that make much more of that stress much more predictable and much less likely to completely destroy a weekend. It's still home care.
Yep. You can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of the 24/7 aspect if you want to be on the healthcare spectrum and be a part, have a seat at the table for that.
Yeah.
However, you can create systems and you don't have to burn your team out and that be the system. I'm so glad you pointed that out because my story, it's often misunderstood, but I was not the owner. So I was an operational leader. We built to 7 locations and I had a big hand in that, but I was not the owner. And so I had to create that story for myself. And then there was no way I was going to pass that on to my team members just because I didn't want it anymore. So there was definitely layers that had to be created and multiple systematic solutions, which some of them I think we'll probably dive into today.
Well, and I don't think there's anybody who feels good about the fact that, yeah, great, as the owner, I'm no longer the one on call, but somebody else is, and that's stressful. You know, on call is part of life. Like somebody's got to do it. We're doing it with agency owners with our AI agents and stuff. But passing the burden of the most stressful part of the job, whatever that most stressful part of the job is, onto the people doesn't feel good. And so I love the work that you guys are doing to make that a much more compartmentalized, a much more defined part of the business. Which leads us to one of the things that I think has been a real addition to a real like valuable contribution that you've made to like kind of the conversation about running a home care agency is talking about this idea of management and leadership and the difference. And the thing that I've heard you say is that you're an incredible leader, but you suck at managing people. And so talk a little bit about like where that came from and like how you guys got into really talking about management as a concept and how it's holding people back.
I have been doing this presentation, and that is the title, speaking to the being an incredible leader, but you suck at managing. And it's kind of actually coming from the South. That's really hard for me to say out loud because that word is actually like a cuss word where I'm
don't
from.
say suck. Not allowed.
Exactly. So, but it's intentional because I think we need that wake up call as home care operators. Is that you're not a bad leader. That I never see a problem with leadership from home care owners. That they have a lot of strong qualities in leadership, but management, there's so much room for improvement. And I want to make it very clear, I can say that both from working on this side, helping owners become better managers and develop systems to improve their management overall. But I can also say it because I used to also be the one that sucked at it. And I had to have that wake up call with myself to go back to what we were just talking about with burnout. The fact is, like I was at my wit's end. There's a whole story to how I really almost ended my career in home care. It was a wake up moment for me to realize I needed systems in place and management systems in place so that it all didn't rely on me and my immediate input on every single solution to make sure the business survived.
Yeah. How do you think about, like, how do you define the difference between leadership and management?
This is Emily's definition. This is what I think is helpful in the home care industry. And there's probably 1,000 different definitions. And if you ask AI today, and then again tomorrow, it's going to be a different answer. So this is Emily's definition. I believe that leadership is more those soft skills, more those characteristic skills of like trustworthiness, being a visionary, having integrity, being compassionate, more the soft skills, intangible pieces of working and leading a business or people, where management is more the structure, the hard, tangible things, the systems, the accountability piece, being knowledgeable, having consistency. Sometimes also maybe appearing rigid, very black and white. That's what I think about when I think about management.
For some reason, my CEO reads like The Art of War, like Sun Tzu. And so we end up like talking in some like over militarized terms sometimes, which is not really my vibe. But as you were saying that, I think it's like a leader is the kind of person that you'd follow into battle. But like a manager is the person who can set up the supply chain and the logistics so that you're not like way out there getting outflanked by the opponent. How's that for a military analogy? It's a first for this show. All right, we're going to edit that out in post. It's terrible. It's terrible. Okay.
I think it's very accurate though. I agree with it.
Tactically, what's missing from management in most agencies?
I think there's a couple things, but one of the biggest things I see is the false assumption that you can be a leader and have this strong passion, be a visionary, and that you can delegate out the management practices or just believe that they'll organically happen. Basically saying, hey, I want to grow to this amount of hours of service this year and kind of just thinking it'll all fall into place if you have the right passion around serving seniors. And there's lots more to that. But I think that's the big problem is just thinking management will kind of naturally fall into place without having an awareness and an expectation on it. To use another analogy, I love analogies. I think of football. In this example, it's kind of like having a head coach as a leader, the head coach of a football team, knowing that they need to win the game, but not knowing anything about defense and just trusting the defense to figure it out. Not having a coach that doesn't know anything about defense or they themselves don't know enough to inspect it. And so they relied solely on that. They continue to be scored on. Even though they're scoring a lot, they're also being outscored on because they don't have the management, the defensive plays in place to kind of keep that in line. So you're a leader, so you're the head coach. You trust somebody to do it, but you don't actually know enough to know if they're doing it right. That's kind of what I'm trying to say. The defensive coach doesn't know, isn't executing well, and the leader gets taken advantage of because they don't know enough.
Yeah.
And so I think what's missing is owners or leaders thinking that you can out lead that problem. Like you
Mm-hmm.
can just continue to score more points to overcome that. When in reality, they need to have a pulse on what the defense needs to be doing
Mm.
to keep with that metaphor. We as leaders, I think as much as we might not like it, we have to have some skill set in both.
Yeah.
We definitely need to be strong leaders, but we also need to continue to evolve and sharpen our skill set when it comes to being a manager.
I'm hearing you say that like leadership is something that you typically see home care owners do organically. They just are leaders, but typically they aren't organically managers.
I don't see that naturally a lot. I think that home care attracts a lot of mission-minded people
Mm-hmm.
who are very caring, conscientious, believe in a greater good for others.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's wonderful characteristics of leaders. And you want that. You don't want someone who's pessimistic, negative, doesn't have a desire to help others. I mean, we don't want the opposite of that.
Sure.
But unfortunately, we try to lean into that as good enough
Mm-hmm.
to serve the demands of the seniors in our community or to grow. And I think oftentimes owners or leaders hire someone to replace their weaknesses. So as an owner, you might realize I need somebody to come in and provide that structure. The problem is I think it stops after the interview or the first couple days of really setting the stage on management.
Mm.
So meaning the leader, the owner, it basically explains, "Hey, I'm not as good at this, so I really need your help in that."
Yeah.
And it's accountability, it's structure, it's standard operating procedures, it's
Yeah.
KPIs, what key performance indicators, whatever it might be. They talk about it. Kind of set the expectation of that's now your job, and based on your background, I know you can do it. Get at it.
Yeah.
And then they don't bring it up again. And they don't ask enough questions ongoing to really make sure it's happening.
Because I think most people can relate to this, right? I'm not doing a great job of managing people. I brought somebody on who was kind of a people manager, who was more of like an operations oriented person, whose job was to have the metrics and the KPIs in place. But I think most people can relate to like, we're not as crisp as we should be on those details. What happens when that doesn't get solved? Like, what have you seen as a result of this management vacuum?
I think my story is a really good example. I mean, you almost call it quits or you do.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't leave on your terms really. You're kind of just giving up. There becomes a point where you're burning the candle at both ends, bottlenecking growth, you're plateauing. If you do what you talked about at the beginning of our time together and delegate the problem to someone else
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of wash your hands of it and say, that's my right as a tenured entrepreneur, then it's just kicking the can down the road for that person to also have the same problems. And inevitably, you don't grow. You don't hit your goals. You don't have the impact. I mean, for me, there's a story about my grandparents that I'll say for another day. But in short, part of why I do what I do today is because they didn't have a good experience in home care from more than one home care agency in the service area that they lived in. And so for me, I'm motivated to try to make sure that businesses learn what they need to do to be able to create that better experience than what my grandparents had.
Yeah.
Because they do care to want to do that. Ultimately, if you don't do something with your management, if you don't have a system, put systems in place and some of the things that I'd love to dive into, then you're going to bottleneck. You're not going to have that impact like I want people to have with future grandparents that don't have a bad experience with home care.
Yeah. What does it look like when management's right? Like, how do you know, like you walk into a home care agency, how do you know that they've got not just like good leadership in place, but like good management in place?
Results are going to be there, no doubt. The demand issue is not a thing in home care right now. Seniors are aging every day. We're no doubt going to need to provide home care for years to come. You're going to have results in service hours if you are doing management right. If you're plateauing, if you're not growing, then you're definitely not you don't have management practices in place to be able to respond to the demands. That's an obvious.
Yeah.
High turnover though in your staff and specifically your office staff.
Yep.
We could talk about caregivers another day, but office staff, there's going to be high turnover in the office staff.
What are some of the other metrics that suffer or that people are struggling to impact and just aren't able to do it?
I mean, quality is going to be hit for sure. And that's kind of the story with my grandparents. The quality wasn't there.
Yeah.
I believe bigger on a more macro level, people are not going to choose home care. That's more macro. That's not what you're talking about
Yeah.
in terms of day-to-day operations.
Well, but I think that matters, right? Like, this isn't just like a leave your home care agency and they go to another home care agency. Like, how many times have people gone in to clean up after another home care agency and people were out on home care and decided to give you the last chance and like, oh, it wasn't a problem with home care, it was a problem with the last one. There's plenty of times we don't get those opportunities because somebody's already decided on, well, community's right for me, AL, memory care, whatever. Even though like we know that people's preference is to age in their home, they just are like, I guess this isn't actually an option at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's not worth the trouble because of all the mistakes and things that fell through. And that typically will be a management problem. I'm not, and I think I need to be careful. It's not like it's a silver bullet. There's a management manual that you just need to put into your business and all will be well. We're still dealing with people. We're still dealing with challenges that caregivers either do truly just no call, no show because they were a bad hire and don't care, or truly have situations where they had an emergency on the way to work and can't make it. So those things are still going to happen, but you still need management practices in place that allow you to have a bench, that allow you to have a process that everybody on your team understands how to respond should this happen. And not only if it happens to one person today, but if it happened to three at the same time. Like creating management structures that allow you to be able to respond to those seniors. Again, using my grandmother, that was the story. Lots of no call, no shows. And actually making sure they still get their medicine that morning and they still get their breakfast. And it can be done. We did it. That was something we never sacrificed on. Again, not creating a utopic vision of never made a mistake, never had a caregiver not show, but having systems in place so that we could triage it the best way possible and be able to follow through on the promises we made when we sat in that living room and said, we've got your back.
Yeah.
Consider it done, whatever you need.
I think like a symptom of management not being there is like you've hired somebody, we think they're a good fit, the right kind of person. They've got a lot of the soft skills that we need. Like they should be successful, but they're just not performing at the level that we need them to. And so what are the things that you see good managers do or some of the tweaks that people listening could do if they've got somebody not performing well, and you can pick a department and give some metrics and KPIs and stuff for that individual, but like somebody who's not performing well, getting them on the right track and getting them performing well?
Yeah. So, gosh, I have a lot to say on that thought. I'll be repetitive and say systems again, like having systems that you are going to commit to and always do, and making sure to never shy away from. So not setting a system in that is utopic and assuming all things are working in your favor that day, but like bare minimum, this is what we do, period, end of story, and creating systems that make sure the team understands that. So in a no call, no show setting, do you send your staff, does a staff member go out? Do you have lead caregivers or rapid response caregivers? And if they can't be there, what are your backup plans? Having contingency plans. That's a system.
Yeah.
And everybody knowing that system. The other thing is specific to KPIs and getting people to essentially level up. I want to speak to something that I've come to realize, and that's there's like 4 stages of management that I see in home care. And so the first stage of management is just simply like happy to be there, happy to be in business, thankful to have some clients and some revenue and some caregivers to pay. We're just managing the day-to-day. That's a very early business and no fault to anybody that's been in that stage. But we have to get out of that stage pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so that comes to stage 2 is what I typically see. So there's different, depending on the owner. And so stage 2 is where we are evaluating numbers and looking at them, but we're reporting that information to our team. So let's use a really common one. It would be, I'm an owner. I would look at my numbers from last week and I'm like, ooh, overtime shot up. Let me talk to the team and let them know that overtime has shot up. We need to be mindful. That's expensive. Let's work to make sure we don't do that as much this week.
Sure.
As one example. Then stage 3 is you as an owner or operational leader, people are instead noticing the numbers, meaning they're mining for the data. They're letting you know overtime was this amount versus that amount last week. You've shifted from you're looking at the numbers and reporting it to your team is looking at the numbers and reporting it to you.
Yep.
That's stage 3. And that's where I was for a really long time. What we really need to do to get people to truly level up to what you were speaking to is become a stage 4 manager. And that's where you have your team mine the data, like we've said at stage 3, and they report it to you, but they also report their plan on what they're going to do to improve their results, where they're at, or what they're going to keep doing, what I call double down on, meaning it's working, let's keep doing it. And I should back up because I forgot to mention this. The way I define KPIs is different than what maybe others are thinking of. So KPIs is key performance indicator.
Yep.
Well, to me, I break that down and I say it's an indicator of performance. So what do they perform on? What do they do to get that number? And I believe every person should have no more than 6, and it's okay to have less than that. And I basically a range of 3 to 6 per department is what I typically say in home care. So 3 to 6 for the scheduling department might be an example, and one of those is overtime. So if they're reporting out that their results were above what their goal was for overtime, then they're going to report to their leader that what they're going to do differently to improve that before next week or before next month or before tomorrow, depending on the structure.
Yeah. Give me an example of that. So our overtime target was, let's say, under 5% overtime. And we were at 8% this week. What are some of the, what does that conversation sound like from somebody who is really bought in? Like you got a scheduler who's clearly being managed well and is performing well. Like what does that report out to their leader, their operational leader sound like?
So just to clarify, to repeat back what you said, the goal is 5%. They hit it at 8%. So they were not within their goal,
right?
And they need to improve.
That's right.
So a utopic version of that would be they come to the meeting, if this is a meeting that they have to report this data out on, and they explain to you the results, and they say, and my plan is, and they actually give a detailed line by line plan potentially. So what I envision is I looked back at last week. I saw Susie Jones had 15 hours ongoing with Mr. Smith because he requested it. Team member took the call, accepted it, didn't think to ask if it should be paid for by that client. That's an option you could pitch. And so I'm going to work to make sure Mr. Jones knows that he can have Susie, but we would need to charge for that overtime if he wants to keep her. Otherwise, we have somebody else. And so then that's one person. And then we look at the next person. We look at the next person to where theoretically by next week, it's down below the 5% because we've evaluated why it became 8% in the first place. And they've told us what they're going to do. We didn't tell them what to do.
Yeah.
They said, here's how I'm going to improve it. I love the opposite of that, though, too, is that they double down, right? And so it's not that they have a problem, but they can tell you what they're proud of, what has gone right, and what they're going to keep doing right.
Give me a feel let's say the conversation is the other way, right? Goals 5% or less overtime. We're at 3% overtime. Because I think it's easy to take our eye off of that metric once we hit it. We're like, okay, cool. Well, overtime solved. Bet that's never a problem again. And then surprise, it kind of is sometimes.
Exactly. So that, and we're biased to negativity, right? So we highlight where we're not doing well enough. And so I think that's a key part that doesn't need to get missed. And so an example of that, if they're hitting their goal, then they might have created a system 3 weeks ago in that example where they were going to lower it before. And that system was seek approval from director of the scheduling department for any additional overtime. And I'm making this up, not even recommending it, but let's say that person said, so from now on, if somebody wanted overtime, they had to put the person on hold, wait for the supervisor. I'm, again, not advocating this is the system you should use, but they would be that specific. And they would then say in the double down, hey, it's working really well that when a caregiver is going to be put into overtime and they want those hours, that we're pausing for just a second to talk with the supervisor and make sure there's no other options or solutions or way to charge the client, whatever the version might be, that they've put a systematic pause in place just to make sure. So we're going to keep doing that because it's working. Random made up example I just made up, not saying.
Well, and I think the build in some pauses actually makes a lot of sense to me. One of the things that I think happens is we get going too fast. Something that I'm aware of is we've got our on-call caregivers built into the system. And one of the things that happens sometimes is we pull the cord too soon on the on-call caregiver. and we send them to the visit that was pretty easy to solve for. And then we get the hard call out with the caregiver, with the shift that's out in the middle of nowhere and it's difficult to staff and the client's kind of a pain. And so their do not send list is a mile long. And it's like, oh, it'd be really nice right now to have that on-call caregiver available to go to this visit. And we could have done almost anything else with the first one. And so I think like having defined SOPs with like discussion points or approval points or break points in to say, let's take a minute and let's figure out, because everything's so urgent in home care. It's always on fire. People are always running a million miles an hour, but it's like, the old driver's ed from this is maybe not everybody's driver's ed experience. My driver's ed teacher was a stunt man. A safe door blown right into his face while he's on a movie set. Anyways, he was a driver's ed instructor also in Memphis, Tennessee, and a stunt guy and a driver's ed instructor. So anyways, he had a line that was from some race car driver that was, I'd rather go into a corner slow and come out fast than go into a corner fast and come out dead. And there's kind of that sounds dramatic for home care. I'm not killing it with my analogies today. That's fine.
You are, in fact, killing it,
okay,
I think. But
that's
go ahead.
Not great. That's even worse. Making it worse. You hear how you're making it worse, right? Anyways, but I think the same thing applies in home care, right? Like when we are moving too fast and we're not slowing down to evaluate the decisions that we're making, we're not following the SOPs that we've set up. That's where we can really get into some trouble. So I do like the idea of building in some like approval gates or some like discuss it with somebody first, brainstorm on other solutions before we go ahead with the easy button or the dumb decision that we made too fast.
Yeah, just again, a pause, not so much like a micromanagement of you
Sure.
can't do anything without my approval. It's just that a system that says, let's just double check we're thinking through this fully.
Yeah.
Your story reminds me of my son goes to a Montessori school, and a practice they do is the teachers teach ask three, then me. And so the idea is you ask three peers the question, and then you ask the teacher. So like if you need something, you ask the peers on how to do it. And so that the way that it's structured is they want the elder students in the classroom to become guides as well. And just it's all, holistic in that way. But it reminds me of what you're talking about. Like you exhaust that rapid response caregiver, then yeah, that's a bad system because now you don't have your contingency plan. So figuring out maybe an ask three, then them approach or something like that could be a part of a systematic approach. But I want to also really quickly, unrelated specifically to the ask three, then me, is go back to the value of this structure. When you're a stage 4 manager and you have a team that's mining the data, meaning they're going and finding out how they measured up on their KPIs. Did they hit 8% or 5%, whatever that version is? And then telling you their plan or what they're proud of.
Yep.
You are creating what I would call as mini entrepreneurs, miniature entrepreneurs that believe in the business of doing their business is scheduling or their business is recruiting. And so that empowers them. And furthermore, they are bought into the solution. So let's say, for example, they create this pause. They took 5 minutes to think, what can I do to improve these results? And they report it out to you and potentially their peers, depending on the structure of the meetings that you set up. They have delivered to you their plan, their business plan, so to speak, on what they're going to do in their department to improve results. And you didn't say, I need you to go do this.
Right.
And then they go, oh, okay. And go to their office and just appease you versus doing it and saying, this is my idea. And you just thumbs up it. I mean, it's a game changer in terms of getting to results and having people bought into what they're doing.
When was the first time in your career that because I would guess like your pathway to doing this the right way was like probably not particularly linear. Like when did you see it like click into place for you?
The stage 4 piece, like actually getting them empowered to do it in a structured way, probably didn't come till like 2017. And 2016 is when I had the burnout. But so the structured approach changed. I was starting to get people to be empowered and feel like they own their departments. So the KPI setup, like actually doing KPI goals and really saying, okay, instead of us just reporting out all these numbers, like how many caregivers you hired, how many interviews you did, how many counselings were done last week, all this just data, just vomited in a weekly meeting with your peers.
Yep.
Instead of that, we did shift really closely to that time frame of me burning out and really waking up and saying, no, there's systematic things we can do differently. I changed to KPIs. So instead of that, we're saying, okay, our goal is hire 4 caregivers a week. Our goal is convert 50% of our interviews into a new hire and try to shoot for that. Make sure they actually show to their first orientation. So that was first. And then about a year later, we added that third piece, which, so we had the result, the goal. The goal was first. After that, we did the double down or plan to improve. That was about a year later, and big game changer to that point. Both had great impact though, because once you start knowing what you're measuring against versus just telling a number, you're going to change your behavior naturally for that too, as a team member.
Is your experience that people progress in a linear fashion from like level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4 management? Like, is that kind of the next step, is if you're a level 2 manager, get to a level 3? Or is it better to like go straight to a level 4 manager?
I think you can go straight to a level 4, not from a stage 1. It would be a big stretch to go from no data, no KPIs, to suddenly expecting your team to report. I don't even think you understand it yet to expect your team to do that. So I do think it's somewhat linear, but I do think you can jump from, I don't know, I've never gotten that question. So as I think about it more, it might be a big jump to go from stage 2 to stage 4. Stage 2 being that you tell your team the data. So I do think you probably do need it more linear than I was originally thinking. So, because you got to get them used to finding the data. And that's another thing, talking to the AI expert here. I am a fan of AI. I know that there's opportunities for us to have like a good working partnership with AI. But when it comes to this is one thing that you can use AI to tell you the information, but I think there is a key part that as a team member, you need to fill something out with your hands, type it in, some sort of owning the communication piece of your results. As much as I like things to be automated and at my fingertips, this is one thing I wouldn't automate, and it's something I've had clients do, and I've seen it not work because of it, and we've had to go back and fix it. And that is to just let the reports kind of look that way and then go to the last section and fill it out. Meaning plan to improve or double down. But I really think they need to feel the feeling of, I was supposed to hire 4 and only 2 came. Like, I didn't hit my mark. So while you could automate that, I think there's too much value in them typing that in there and really owning that feeling of like not meeting the mark.
I think like self-reflection is something that like is an inefficient process, but is a really effective process. And we need people to go through the process of self-reflection and figuring out what their results were and then why those results were the way that they were. And I think that's a really important step to not skip. So self-reflection is a genuinely human activity. And I'm cool not using AI to automate genuinely human activities. What I want is, in most places, my sense is there's too much context switching and there's too little bandwidth to adequately make time for the self-reflection. And so where I want to solve is all the stuff that prevents us from doing the self-reflection, all the stuff that prevents us from doing the genuine human interaction.
It's very common. I speak about it a lot. We need to work on the business, not in the business, as owners and operational leaders of home care businesses. Well, what I'm trying to say is also we need our lead scheduler to work on the scheduling department and not in the scheduling department. And you can structure this honestly, in my world, it was in a week's time, maybe 20 minutes of their time. In total. Like, because what we did, we had end of day reports where they were doing this. And so that's 2 minutes of self-reflection every day. And then on the weekly basis, maybe 10 minutes. But doing it consistently on a cadence, such as I just said, weekly, daily, and even monthly, it really builds up. It really leads to an evolution of improvement in the business.
Tell me how 24/7 Solutions helps with all this management stuff.
A couple of things. I would love to help any listeners with a tool. We're very try to be value first and make sure that we provide people with as much content and education to help them work independently and grow their businesses, whether we ever talk to them or not. So if anybody is listening and wants to learn more about how we set up the structure to become a stage 4 manager and the KPIs that we used in that regard, we'd love for you to email us, info@247solutions.co, not .com, so .co, info@247solutions.co, and just let us know you listened to the podcast and you tolerated David for the 45 minutes we've been on this and me to get that free tool. We'd love to send that to you. But to answer your other question, David, really what we do is we try to meet owners where they're at, and find out what their bottlenecks are. What are they struggling with? And so we would do a consultation and just figure out which ways we can serve and help them. Say we have 3 verticals: training, performance group management, which we call Powerhouse Peers, and our consulting. And so we would do a consultation to see what made sense. But one thing I will point out is we have unique to us and unique that we get to do is we have a Powerhouse Peers program for administrative staff members. So when we're talking about everything we've been talking about today, and you have a scheduler that you want to be empowered to become that miniature entrepreneur like we've been talking about, we have support for that, where we bring schedulers together or recruiters together or sales reps together or client care managers together virtually, non-competing, so they're not working together with somebody that's a competitor to them in their territory, but they come together virtually for a peer group model, and then also have monthly coaching with one of our subject matter experts regarding their field. And so we're here to further amplify their successes and really get them bought into growing and moving the dial in your business.
What action do you want to take people to take as a result of this episode today?
I think ultimately for their business is just to really decide where they're at in the management stages.
Yeah.
Are they a stage 3, stage 4, and really figure out how they can get to that stage 4 level. So from a tactical perspective, email us to get that tool so you can start to evaluate what you can do. If you're curious about speaking to us and learning more about us, you can go to our website at 247solutions.co, and we'd love to talk to you and learn more about what we can do to help you.
Great. Well, Emily, thank you for coming on the show today. It was good to have you back, and always good to catch up.
Me too. Thank you.
On behalf of the team here at Zengage, thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating while you're there. It helps other people find the show. If you have comments on the show, drop me a line, david@zengage.com. Would love to hear from you, chat with you there.